Thank you for all being here this morning on what is obviously a very serious matter. The events of the brutal murder of a young baby girl in Bristol, Connecticut, allegedly by Arthur Hapgood, has again raised the very real and serious failures of Governor Malloy's early release program. And the facts that have come out are, quite frankly, shocking. Under the policy of this administration, you can get early release credits, get out of jail early, and successfully complete a drug rehabilitation program despite testing positive for drug use not once, not twice, but 3 times, and refusing to take a drug test for the 4th time, presumably because it would have led to a 4th failure. I ask you to go ask any citizen in Connecticut, regardless of their political affiliation or views, do you think it's responsible for the state to say that someone should get out of jail early because they took a drug rehabilitation program, yet they tested positive for drug use during that program 3 times? You won't find a single person who says that policy makes sense. Again, we need to highlight and talk about the failure of this policy and the failure of the oversight and implementation of this policy by this administration. That's what we're here to talk about today. And with that, I want to turn it over to Senator Fasano, who has done all of the legwork, much of the legwork on this, for him to talk about it. Senator?
Thank you, John. As John states, it is very sad that baby Calloway had to suffer the consequences of a policy that, frankly, puts public safety in jeopardy. And what's before us is a long record of what common sense people would say just doesn't make sense. So let's look at the facts. The risk reduction credits are supposedly given for those people who show an inclination to turn their life around, who understand the rules of society, who understands that they're in jail, they committed a wrong, and they want to better themselves. And we give them an opportunity under the program. But the program lacks oversight, most importantly, lacks accountability, lacks total file review, and the respect and the caring and the understanding for public safety here in Connecticut. And all you have to do is look at this case to determine what all that means. So let's start off with Mr. Hapgood, inmate number 234578. In 1995, he gets arrested for firearms. He has an altercation with firearms, identification, and illegal possession of firearms a year later in 96. He has a felonious larceny in 97. He escapes in 98. And another felonious larceny in 1998. Those are convictions. Now remember where our system works. We don't know what the actual crime was. One could certainly make the argument they're worse than what they pled to, but that's what he pled to. Then, in 2001, he commits a robbery. He's incarcerated 6 years, 5-year probation. In December 2007, mindful he's in jail for a period of time with respect to the first part, he's out and he gets caught with the sale of narcotics near a school. He has 4 years of incarceration, 3 years probation. In January 2008, is when they had the violation of probation hearing on the robbery, and he ends up serving time with this drug issue still out there. So he's in jail in 2008, well, 2007, 2008. 2009, he assaults an inmate. 2010, refuses to take a urinalysis test, one may argue, because he probably was going to test positive in jail. 2011, he fails the drug test. That was in October. In November 2011, he disobeys a direct order. In September 2012, he fails a drug test. In November 2012, he fails a drug test. And after all that, in May in 2013, they release him to a halfway house. Part of that is to get you ready to go back to society. So in May 2013, he goes to a halfway house. What does he do with this halfway house? Well, apparently, he helps 2 inmates escape from Chase Center. So he helped the inmates leave incarceration. So they put him back into jail. In 2013, after all of this, after everything he's done to date, he gets released because he earned 233 risk reduction credits. Now, he lost 45 of those credits somewhere along the line for various infractions that I've discussed. But he earned 233 risk reduction credits. And then, as we know, so he gets out of jail. Now he's on probation for that drug offense that I talked about earlier. And when he's on probation for that drug offense, it requires him to have drug testing. Because don't forget, he has a drug history. He showed drug history in jail. He's out. He's got to be tested because he's out on a drug offense. He fails 3 drug tests. Passes 1, fails 3 drug tests. 3. And what we learned this morning was the one he failed 1 week before he killed baby Calloway. Turned out that that test result, which came in the day that the incident happened, that result showed positive for marijuana and PCP. This is a system that's fundamentally wrong. With a lack of oversight and a lack of responsibility, this is a conveyor belt for releasing people without regard to their record. The argument that is made from time to time when this program is criticized is under the old program, they would have been out earlier. First, that argument dodges the real issue, which is what's wrong with this program. Second, it is an unfair and irresponsible statement to make for these reasons. When that statement is made, it is the assumption that after 85% of the crime, after 85% of the sentence is served, they're going to get released because the warden is going to sign the release papers and let them out. But we know that doesn't happen. Why? Because under the program, some people were kept in jail. Why? Because someone actually looked at a file and said, we can't let this person out. They're not following the rules. It doesn't make sense to let this person out. In this system, there's no accountability. No one is looking at the whole record. No one went back and said, let me get this right. He was in jail for drugs. He failed 3 in jail, got out. He failed another 3. Yeah, let's let him out earlier. It is bean counters counting the days and then looking at a file and saying, we've matched that thing. Let's let him out. That's irresponsible legislation. It's irresponsible policy. In addition, when you got out earlier under the old system, you didn't just get out and released. You're subject to probation. You're subject to review of the courts, accountability. Mr. Hapgood finished his robbery 233 days early. He was not accountable to anybody for that robbery. It was the drug issue, which was running concurrent, that the probation doesn't run because he's not out of jail, that ran. Under our old system, if you would, he would have been subject to probation if he got out early. If he got out early. So the argument that our old system would have gotten someone out earlier is really without merit. Look, we recognize that this system was put in by this administration and the Democratic majority. We understand that. But for the Democratic majority, Governor Malloy and his administration to say, it's better than the old system, leave it alone, is disrespectful and disingenuous to public safety in the state of Connecticut. Changes need to be made. They need to be made now. Not later. Now. Next week. Because cases like Hapgood are happening all the time. And we're finding out about them after the fact. And just to let you know, the reason why this press conference didn't happen a week ago or 10 days ago was because of the stonewalling that my office has gotten from the Department of Corrections and Probation to get records. When a legislator asks commissioners for information and departments for information, and you get a runaround for reasons that I don't know, that's wrong. Are you hiding something? Are you afraid of the truth? That's wrong. But we dogged it. I want to thanks to my staff for staying vigilant and continually writing and not listening to the rhetoric that was sent back, but asked for facts. And it took us forever to get this information, lo and behold, just this morning about the PCB testing. Just this morning. And we've asked a number of agencies a number of questions. That's just fundamentally wrong. There's no transparency here. And I understand why. Because there's hap goods all over the system, and they don't want us to know about it. I'm going to ask Senator Kissel to make some comments.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Senator McKinney and Senator Fasano for calling this press conference. I'll be brief, and this is my perspective on what's going on. As many of you are aware, I have 6 correctional facilities in my district housing thousands of inmates, and I've taken it upon myself over the 22 years that I've been lucky enough to serve the people of North Central Connecticut to go and tour those facilities, as well as other facilities throughout the state of Connecticut, and talk to the corrections officers, the men and women who are on the ground. And they would state that at the outset that there were some laudable goals of the early release program if it was an accountable system. Back when I started, the inmates were gaming the system when it came to sentencing. And we actually had to provide many reforms 20 years ago to get truth in sentencing so that everybody knew what the rules were and that the inmates followed the rules. Inmates have tons of time on their hands, and there's nothing better that they can come up with is how can I game the system? Senator Fasano and Senator McKinney are exactly correct. The system is wrong fundamentally for one glaring reason that puts public safety at risk. That little baby, and I do not want to go into the heart-wrenching details of what happened to that little baby because it is horrific. But that's no more horrific than someone getting shot who's just trying to make ends meet working late in a 7-Eleven or a store like that. I mean, we can't put men, women, and little children at risk because what is going on is if you go through the pro forma of these programs, which are not accountable, that there is a rubber stamp mentality now that you will get the time for taking that program. And when I talk to my corrections officers, there is a danger in going down this road. When the system is held accountable, then that maintains order within the corrections facilities because the inmates are driven towards good behavior. And ultimately, the goal is to have productive citizens when they're released. If you create a system that has flaws, that is essentially a sham in many respects because there's no accountability, you engender disrespect for the system, and you create an environment within the corrections institutions where the inmates feel that they're a little more clever by half than the administrators that are running the system. And so with a wink and a nod, oh yes, I'm taking this program, but I know I'm getting out. So Senator Fasano, Senator McKinney, I applaud you. What kind of system is it where if you're taking a drug program and you fail on the other end of it 3 times, that you still get credit for passing that program, you still get good time credit so that you get released early, and the net result is a little baby gets horribly murdered. That's wrong. So I join my colleagues, Senator McKinney, Senator Fasano, and others on our side of the aisle in saying we need a pause, we need to reassess this program with an eye towards making it fundamentally fair. I'd like to see many aspects of it thrown out, but that's me. I didn't support it. I think that you need to sort of go into this slowly and make sure that there's respect for the system. But in the least, we should stop the system, assess it, and make sure that there's fundamental accountability. The public's health and safety deserves no less. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We're also joined today by Senator Tony Guglielmo and Senator Scott France.